Okay, Bryant asks, tips for standing or rolling starts for someone new to wheel racing. So, boy. So, first of all, standing starts are pretty rare in North America. There are some series that have them, and probably the biggest thing there is practice a standing start before you ever come up to a standing start. So during practice sessions, you get yourself in a position in pit lane or wherever where you're allowed to do, from a standing start, boom, take off. Because what you need to do is figure out how much RPM to give the engine and how quickly you can come out of the clutch to get the right amount of wheel spin, and/or you want just a little bit of wheel spin to get the wheels moving, but because if you don't get any wheel spin, you're likely to kind of get the engine to bog a little bit. You don't want that. But if you get too much wheel spin, you kind of just sit in place and you're not going anywhere. So you're trying to find the right amount of slippage there. So, and that's a matter of how much RPM and how quickly you're coming off the clutch. One of the things that I've done coaching drivers that were competing in a series years ago that used the standing start, one of the things that we did was we would go to a track and we'd do practice standing starts. But what I would do is I would take a radio and stand behind their cars. So I usually try to do this with 2 cars at a time. Fortunately, I was coaching 2 drivers at the time. So what I would do is I'd stand behind one of the cars with the radio keyed, and therefore what was blasting into the driver's ears was the sound of engines of another car, because you can't be looking at the tachometer and watching what the RPM is and judging you're got to be able to kind of feel what that RPM is and hear that. But with a lot of cars around you, you may not be able to hear that. So if you have the opportunity to practice that, get somebody, while you've got your radio on in your helmet, and get somebody to key up the mic near another car that's revving its engine at a different time than you are. And it's just going to distract you a little bit, but if you're able to do it there, then when you do it in real life, it gets a whole lot easier. Rolling starts, I think, to me, starts are, I know like a lot of people look at it and go, the old saying of you can't win a race in the first corner, but you can really lose it. Yeah, absolutely. But there's such an opportunity at the start of a race to gain a position. And some race series now you're not allowed to pass until you're past the start line. So you've got to stay in your lines. So knowing what the rules are for that series, where you've got to stay in your line, in your formation, until you get past the start line, then you can start to pull out to make some attempt to pass. The very first thing is, when does a race start? It doesn't start with the green flag necessarily. I mean, it does, but it starts when everybody else starts. And I know drivers who just wait to see the green flag, but there's like cars around them who've already started to accelerate half a second, a tenth of a second before they have, and they've waited. And they're waiting for the green flag. Don't wait for the green flag. As soon as everybody starts to go, you go with them. And in the perfect world, you'd go that tenth of a second or half a second before everybody else will. And there is something over time that you develop with experience, is that ability to kind of read the starter, and you're kind of watching and you're just looking for a little shoulder move, and then a wave of the flag, and any kind of movement you just go on it. So you're looking for stuff like that. Looking for openings. I see so many drivers at the start of a race, all they do is they all go shooting down the inside as they approach the first corner. And so often, I and other drivers have just driven down the outside and driven around everybody. Yes, there is the danger of cars tangling up on the inside, and as we've talked about earlier, when the cars tangle up a lot of times on the entry of the corner, they tend to slide out to the outside, in which case, if you're driving around the outside, you could get collected by that. That's one of the dangers in doing it, one of the risks. But there's often a great opportunity just to drive around the outside of the pack, because everybody just stacks up on the inside. So I guess what I'm saying is, don't be afraid to go looking for an opening, and just go for the opening. Most times you're going to gain something by doing that. Of course, I'm going to turn all this around and go back to saying you're going to learn a whole lot more and have a better chance of getting a result if you're there at the end of the race. And if you get caught up in a mess in the very beginning because you're too aggressive, trying to get too much in the start, it's not going to pay off.